Newstalk to be 21 after 10. The Prime Minister until 11, transferring attention to Auckland Council and the Mayor Len Brown. When the new Super Council was formed under your administration,
yes,
there was nothing. You granted powers to the mayor, whoever it was going to be, that were presidential, with no power to recall, no power to address a situation like exists now, which I certainly believe by far the majority of Auckland ratepayers don't want, and they would like him gone. But you made no allowances for this, an oversight of the greatest order, wouldn't you say?
Well, I've just come from a meeting, actually, funnily enough, with them prior to this. But that's by the by. Look, I don't know. You ask a fair and reasonable question, and I don't know whether other provisions in mayoralties around the world have what effectively I think you'd be talking about, which would be impeachment provisions, the capacity to sort of essentially force someone out. Because he's directly elected, it's vastly different. So if that situation happened to me, then obviously my fate actually, funnily enough, wouldn't be with the voters, it would be with the caucus.
Yeah, but this is different because he's responsible to nobody. Nobody can take him to task in real terms. And if we deal with it in the American sense of the recall, take the governor of Wisconsin, who in 3 years has been elected twice because there were enough of the union folk who organised a recall, because you have to have certain conditions fulfilled. They got the recall, he stood again and was re-elected. Now, in the circumstances that exist here, something matching that would be appropriate. And the question becomes, will you and your government do something to change the rules so that can happen?
Well, I haven't looked at it. And, I could certainly ask for a bit of advice on it. I suspect it wouldn't be as straightforward. I don't know. I suspect it wouldn't be as straightforward as we might say. I mean, firstly, under what conditions could you trigger such provisions? So if you take this guy, Rob Ford, who's the mayor of Toronto, you look at that situation, they haven't been able to get him out either.
No, because they don't have the provisions, obviously.
So the question becomes, because there are two elements to the issue swirling around Len Brown, isn't it? I mean, there's some people...
No, there's only one issue. He's a pariah and he's not wanted.
Okay, but there's fundamentally, if you want to dissect that a little more, two issues, I still think. One is there are the issues of morality. You can take your debate on that. And then there's a second issue around whether there was impropriety. And that's the bit that's trying to be tested by that guy McCready. Now, whether there's any validity there, I don't know. That certainly does allow for removal, because I don't know, but I suspect there are issues there if it progressed through to a court case. But certainly in terms of the first one, there's not. So the question is, would you write those provisions into the law around morality, that someone has an affair, it's a reason to recall them? And that would be quite tough, I would have thought.
Does it not sound appropriate to you that when you allow somebody to attain a position, albeit they're voted in the first place, but they retain a position where whatever their conduct might be, specifically, that in other words let's just broad brush it and say because this is a common term and it exists in my contract. If I bring disrepute onto this radio station, they have cause for sacking me.
Right.
So he has brought disrepute into the city of Auckland, unquestionably. So
the question would be, how would you, just thinking that through logically, once the lawyers got involved, because you'd be lawyered up in about 2 minutes, who would determine that? Would that be a vote of the councillors?
No, it would be a referendum-style approach. That the electorate.
Because what happens though, because disrepute can come in many forms, can't it? It could be a situation where, Aaron Gilmore, arguably said some things, he might disagree that he did, but arguably said some things that brought disrepute to the National Party. I don't know, but what I'm saying to you is subjective. That's my only point.
Okay,
I understand your point.
Yes, but it goes like this, that it's like a referendum. Enough people feel strongly enough about aspects of this man's behaviour. So they get the numbers required to have a recall vote. It's like an election, if you want, a recall vote. And if he is if the numbers in that recall, in the vote, are appropriate, then he's gone.
Yep. The only thing I'd say to you is that, look, all of those things, I guess, are potentially possible, although I've never looked at stuff on that. I'm just telling you, I reckon it would be harder to draft than you might think, which is to suspect why it's not
hard
there.
for the Americans.
Well, is it? I mean, do they have it everywhere? I don't know. I haven't researched it, but
I don't know whether it's everywhere. I think it is, but I don't. But I don't know. They certainly have it in California. They have it in Wisconsin. They have it in other places.
See, it would depend on how you trigger it, because just to give you an example, you remember late last year there was the referendum on asset sales, and actually I think fundamentally the opponents would have been quite disappointed. I mean, the turnout was not only low, but actually it was much narrower than people actually originally thought. I mean, generally those referendums are kind of 85 or 90% one way, and not not more 2/3 1/3. But you see, at one level, when that referendum was occurring, it's quite a clever political ploy, because your opponents will just say, if you don't listen to it, oh, you're not listening, and if you do listen, they say, oh, you're changing your policy, so whatever you do, you're wrong. But you know, the funny thing was, you sit there and you say, okay, so we have a general election, it's the main centre plank policy, the whole election's about it. Is that a legitimate reason to then have a second bite at the cherry, which is essentially what the Greens want to use taxpayer money to have another go? And I don't agree with that, you see, because I don't think that was ever the intention.
But are you not missing the point, the essential point here, that in other areas of governance in this country there are ways of doing things, like in even forgetting referenda, in politics you can get beaten, you can be beaten by the House. Yeah. You can get deposed by your own party. In the case of this unique position in Auckland, there is, and now other mayors, I think, around the country as well, but there is nothing that anyone can do. He can be there for his...
Well, firstly, that ultimate day is coming, as it comes to every politician. It's called an election. So I guess let's make the assumption that he hangs in there until 2016, the election. Then that will actually get tested. Now, that might be much slower than what people want or don't want. It's up to them, but certainly you can't avoid it forever. The second thing is that, see, I'm not sure how different it is. So let's say, okay, let's take one of my MPs, and let's say they have an affair. If they're a directly elected MP and they're the MP for XYZ electorate, that doesn't mean that they would lose their seat. I mean, the party could ultimately say, we don't want you anymore, but then they could just do a Brendan Horan and stay as a list MP.
Yeah, but this is different.
Okay.